My name is Andrea, and I'm 57 years old. I've been married to Mark for 34 years. On paper, everything looks stable: a long marriage, a quiet house, grown kids, early retirement. But the truth is, our home is a shell. Mark and I don't fight, we barely speak. The spark disappeared years ago, replaced by silence and routine. Most days we sit in the same room and live entirely separate lives. I cook dinner. He eats. We sleep on opposite sides of the bed without touching. He's not cruel or unfaithful. He's just gone in every way that matters. And I've slowly faded too. There's no passion, no warmth, only the ticking of the clock and the noise of a TV neither of us watches. I began to feel invisible, like I'd crossed some invisible line where I no longer existed as a woman. I miss being noticed, touched, even just heard. My days blurred together in a quiet monotony. I started waking up earlier just to sit by myself with tea, imagining who I used to be. I joined a local painting class, not because I loved art, but because I needed something, anything, that reminded me I was still alive. His name was Ethan. He was 54, soft-spoken, with a calm presence that immediately stood out. We sat near each other in class, and it started with small talk, colors, brushes, art supplies. But quickly, the conversation turned deeper. He asked questions that Mark hadn't asked me in decades. He remembered details, laughed at things I said, and made me feel interesting. I noticed myself changing, putting on lipstick before class, choosing clothes with more care. Not for vanity, but because someone was actually looking. Ethan wasn't pushy. He never crossed a line. But his attention was magnetic. We stayed after class sometimes, just talking in the parking lot, reluctant to go home. He once said, "You have this light in you. I hope you see it." That stayed with me longer than I'd like to admit. I told myself it was innocent, that I was just enjoying friendship. But deep down, I knew I was waking up inside. The loneliness I carried for years was being replaced by anticipation, by something warm and dangerous. I was no longer invisible, and the guilt of enjoying that attention wrestled quietly with a truth I couldn't ignore. I didn't want it to stop. It was never planned. One afternoon, class was canceled and Ethan suggested coffee. I agreed without hesitation. The conversation felt easy, familiar. Somewhere between stories and laughter, he reached for my hand. I didn't pull away. It was a simple touch, but it carried a weight I hadn't felt in years. When he leaned in and kissed me, it wasn't shocking. It felt like something that had already happened in my mind 100 times. I kissed him back, fully aware of what I was doing. Time felt suspended. For the first time in decades, I wasn't thinking about consequences or responsibilities. I was thinking about how alive I felt in that moment. I didn't feel like a wife or a mother or a woman nearing 60. I felt seen, desired, wanted. It wasn't just about the physical. It was about being emotionally present with someone who looked at me like I mattered. Afterward, I sat alone and stared at myself in the mirror. The guilt crept in slow and sharp. I had betrayed something, not just my husband, but the version of myself I used to believe was strong enough to never do this. And yet, I didn't regret how I'd felt. I couldn't carry it quietly anymore. One night, I told Mark I wasn't happy, that I hadn't been for years. He didn't argue, didn't ask questions, didn't show surprise. He simply said, "I figured." There was no anger, no sadness, just resignation. We tried counseling, but it was mechanical. He attended once, then stopped. I realized he'd checked out long before I ever did. I spent more time with Ethan, but not in secret. I wasn't hiding anymore. Not from Mark, not from myself. I didn't leave Mark for Ethan. I left because I couldn't live in emotional silence another year. I filed for separation. Mark didn't fight it. There were no dramatic endings, just two people finally admitting they had let go a long time ago. Ethan remained in my life, but he wasn't the point. The point was me, choosing to feel again, to live with purpose, not just habit. I wasn't trying to chase youth or rewrite my past. I was just done shrinking into a life that didn't fit anymore.
I'm 57.
I've made mistakes, I've broken vows, but I've also reclaimed myself. Maybe that's selfish. Or maybe finally it's just honest.